It's that time of the week again. It's TK Friday. Welcome everyone. Today's episode is called Developing with Masks. Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Yes, it is TK Friday again. I always love TK Fridays and I hope you do too. I know I hear from a lot of you out there saying you do enjoy TK Fridays and I'm happy to be here with you today. Today we'll be working with a mask calculator, we'll be working with color masks, luminosity masks, and we'll also work with the My Channels button. The My Channels button allows you to grab masks that you have stored as channels and then you can do some further editing on them and then use those with your adjustment layers. Recently, I published a video on my YouTube channel where I used DxO Photolab 5 to do the raw processing of this image. I'll link that at the end of this video in case you want to see it. But I mentioned in that video that I do all my local adjustments in Photoshop using the TK8 multi-mask panel. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to make a video where I do some further developing on this image. And I will be using the TK8 multi-mask panel and the CX panel to do that. I'll start out today by saving a sky selection. And to do that, I'm going to come over to the TK8 CX panel and click this button right here, which will select the sky for us. And once the sky is selected, I'm going to use this button right here, which will save that as a channel, which we'll later access with the My Channels button. And so I'm going to call this sky and click OK. And you'll notice I have a sky channel saved for me here. And now I want to select out the water. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller here. So to do that, I'm going to grab this object selection tool. And I have mine set up for rectangle in this mode here. You can change it to lasso or rectangle, but I'm going to use rectangle. And all we have to do is get close to this water here and just kind of draw a marquee around it like this. And I'll save the water as a channel. So come over here and click this icon to save that as a channel. We're going to call this water. Click OK. And now you'll notice I have a water channel. Okay, then now we have a water channel, a sky channel. I would also like to select these autumn trees. Now, how can I do that? Well, we're going to come up and click on the My Channels button. Now, you'll notice I have an active selection, which is this water selection. I have not deselected it yet. I have a sky selection and a water selection, and it's reading my channels down here, okay, sky and water. Now, how can I make this selection on the trees? Here's what I need to do. Let's select sky. And then what we want to do is that sky is selected, but we don't want the sky. So let's invert it. See this icon? Click it. And when you do click it, it will invert that. Now we have those trees selected, but the water is still selected as well. So how can we get rid of the water? If you're thinking mask calculator, you are correct. So let's click on this mask calculator right here. Now we want to remove the water from this selection. So let's use the subtract feature. Let's click it and you'll notice it's highlighted in green now, letting you know that subtract has been selected. Now let's think for a moment. Where did we save that water? Well, we saved it down here in channels. So can we go back to My Channels and locate that? Yeah, let's go ahead and click X. Let's open up My Channels. And we already have subtract selected, so let's click on water, click equal, and check it out. We now have the tree selected without the water, without the sky. Pretty nice. Are you ready for a good tip? After you went through all this trouble creating this tree mask, let's go ahead and save it as a channel. So come right here to this icon and click Save. And let's give it a name. Let's call it trees and click OK. And when I do, you'll notice now the trees are down here in my channels saved. We may not need to use it, but it's there in case we do. Now that I've nicely selected the trees, what am I going to do with them? Well, I want to make some adjustments on them. And I'm going to use one of my favorite adjustments, the color grading tool. I always like to use this now when I start out my images to balance out the highlights, midtones, and shadows. So I'm going to come here to this icon, which will output this selection or this mask to the color grading tool. So just click here. And now I have a color grading layer with the tree mask attached to it. And now for some adjustments. So what I'm going to start out with is the midtones. Click on the midtones. We have the gray block here. I'm going to lighten up the midtones by dragging this luminosity slider to the right, just to lighten up those midtones a little bit here. And I might give them a little warm color grading. So I'm going to take this block and drag it up into yellows a little bit, just to give me a slight warming effect. Here is the before and here is the after, so slightly warmer. And now let me go to my shadows, and I think I'm going to take my shadows and just drag the luminosity slider to the left a little bit just to darken up those shadows. Yeah, that looks really nice. I don't want to go too far here, but I like it. Here is the before and here's the after. And I think the highlights are fine. I'm not going to touch the highlights. You don't have to touch every one of these adjustments in here if you don't want to. In my case, I feel I just need the midtones and the shadows adjusted. But I like this. Here's the before and here's the after. I'm in the process right now of balancing out this image. So I think the water is a little too light. So I've already made a water channel, right? So let's come back up to the My Channels button. Let's select that water. And this time I'm going to send it out to another color grading tool. So click here and I'm going to click on midtones, and what I'll do is I want to darken, right? So I'm going to take this luminosity slider and start to drag it back a little bit, not too much, just a wee little bit, and maybe tint it slightly blue, not much, but just a little bit of a blue tint. So here is the before and here's the after, and I think that was very helpful. I've done the trees, I've done the water, next is the sky. Let's X out of the color grading tool and let's go back to the My Channels button. Can you see how cool this My Channels button really is? Let's select the sky and another color grading tool, and just that quick and easy. A little bit of preliminary setting up of the edit, but from that point on, everything goes smooth, and I really enjoy that. I think I need to tone down the sky a little bit, so I'm going to click on midtones first. And I'm just going to drag the luminosity slider to the left. I'm not going to go too crazy here, but I just feel it's a little bit too light. Maybe I'm going to go more than I thought. I'm going to try right there. Now, it's a little cool, so I might want to warm it up with a little bit of warm tone. So let me drag this block up into yellows just a little bit. I don't want to go too much, but just a wee little bit. Here is the before, and here is the after. I like it. Maybe just slightly warmer. Here is the before, and here's the after. And you can always come back and readjust these things if you need to. But for now, I think I'm happy with that. And let's go to my highlights. And do I want to pull my highlights back a little bit? Let me see. I'm just going to drag. Yeah, I might just pull those highlights back just a wee little bit. So here is the before, and here's after. So the image started out looking like this. I'm just holding the Alt or Option key down and clicking on the background eyeball. Here's my before, and here's the after, but a nice balancing so far. Let me go ahead and make my image bigger. I always forget to do this, but let me go ahead and click this icon right here, and we'll fit this to the screen. I apologize for that at the beginning. I usually work at that size, to be honest with you, because I like a little border around mine. But for the video, it's nice for you guys to see everything. Now, I examine the image and let the image speak to you, because you know what? It does speak to you, and it kind of tells you what it needs. Well, this is an autumn scene, and to me, the image is telling me it wants these autumn trees to really have a little bit more saturation and light in them. So that's what I'm going to work on next. What type of mask do you think we could use to select the colors of these trees? Well, there's a lot of colors, so let's try a color mask. Let's get out of this color grading tool. Let's just click the X, click on the color mask icon, and let's pick a color that we think would represent all these trees. And I think these yellowish tones in here would work. So I'm going to click here and click OK and see what kind of a mask we get. And I like it. It's selecting the trees very well. Let's go ahead and lighten up that selection. Let's drag this luminance slider to the right a little bit and we lighten it up. Now we see we have some clouds in here as well. We can get rid of those. Now we have these paint brushes here, a white and a black brush. Click on your black brush and you can simply, with a nice big brush with a soft edge, 100% opacity, paint off any of those clouds that we don't want in there, which is none. We don't want any of them in there. So we can go ahead and clean this mask right up with this brush. And that's what those tools are for. And I'm referring to all these tools in this gray section here. Now, I like our mask. Now, here's what I recommend. If you like a mask and you think you might use it again, take advantage of this button right here, the save. And just like we did with that previous mask, we're going to save this as a channel. I'm going to call this one Tree Highlights. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and that'll save it as a channel. And if we need to use it at some point in the edit, we have it, and it lives right here in the channels. Now remember, I made this mask so I can make a saturation adjustment on the trees. So let's output this to a hue saturation adjustment layer. And as you can see, we have our hue saturation adjustment layer with the mask. Now we simply take the saturation and drag it to the right. Let's increase our saturation. I don't want to go too crazy here because it'll look unnatural. I might make it look a little oversaturated just to make sure it shows up in the video. And I think I might add a little bit of lightness. Now here's a little tip. When you add a little bit of lightness, you're going to lose a little saturation, so you might have to increase that saturation a little bit. So that's a tip. And here's another one. If you decide to use the lightness slider to darken the image a little bit, then you may find that the saturation increases. So there you might have to pull back on the saturation a little bit. Let's take a look at the before and after. Here's the before, and here is the after. So I like that nice little saturation boost there. I'm continuing to let this image speak to me, and now I think I want some nice light up on some of these light areas of the trees just to sculpt these trees a little bit, and light does a really great job of doing that. And I think I'll do some dodging. Now I saved this channel, this mask in this channel, Tree Highlights, okay? So let's come up here and click on My Channels, and let's click on Tree Highlights, and that'll bring that mask back to us. We don't have to make it all over again. And now let's send it out to a 50% gray dodging layer where we'll be dodging through a selection. So just click on the left side of this dodge icon. And now we have the 50% gray layer with an overlay blend mode, and you can see my selection indicators showing me that we have a selection, and now we can dodge. Now we're automatically set up with a white brush. I'm going to make my brush smaller because it's way too big, and a real soft edge on it. And I'm going to take my opacity down to about 30%. I'm just typing the 3 key and testing it out. Yeah, and see what I'm going to do is kiss some light and just make these trees just really jump out at you. And it really sculpts them as we do that. Now remember, we're dodging through a selection, so it's very much controlling what we're doing. And that is exciting, and I love it. But just take your time. This is where you really become an artist and you really create your image. Now these trees up here that are already light, I'm not going to do too much to them, but I'm just picking out certain trees that I think a little light kissing them may look beautiful. Like look at these trees right in here. These excite me. I love the way these trees look in here. Okay, so I want to have some light on those, and even some of these areas back in here. And how about this tree over here? Yeah, let's zing a little bit of light. Not on everything, but you know, you pick and choose and you find the area where you think it'll look good. And so that's what I'm doing here. And you can always come back and do this later, save this out with all your layers intact. But I think for now, I think I'm good. Maybe I'll hit this a little bit. Okay, and you can go over things again and keep applying extra paint, and it'll lighten each time you do it. Okay, let me close this properties panel. Let's take a look. Here is the before. This is before dodging. And here is after. But isn't that nice the way that light just really zings and makes those trees just really come to life? Again, here's the before, and here is the after. This is the magic of editing. The last thing I want to do for today's tutorial is lighten up some of these tree trunks in the mid-tone areas in here. And to do that, I'm going to grab a levels adjustment. Now I'm just going to click right here to get a levels adjustment. And I'm just going to lighten up the mid-tones a decent amount, and even take this highlight slider and drag it over a little bit, and then pull the shadow slider to the right just to add a little bit of contrast in there. Maybe lighten up a little more. I may over exaggerate this because I can come back and retweak this because I'm going to use a mask to take care of this. Okay, so right about there, let me see, here's a before and here's an after. And I know you're thinking, Dave, you destroyed your image. It was looking so good. Well, don't worry. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come up to the luminosity mask and click right here. And then we're going to click on Midtones 1. There's a Midtones 1 mask. And all I'll do at this point is output it to this black layer mask with a white paintbrush, so it'll hide everything I've done. Click right here. And it says, warning, no pixels are more than 50% selected. That's okay, just click OK. And when you do, you've hidden what I've just done, or I've hidden what I've just done. So it's back, it's back. So now I'm going to be painting through a selection, through a midtones 1 mask. I'm going to get a big brush here. And I'm going to paint at, I'm going to try 100%. I'm going to type my 0 key. Nice soft edge brush here. And I'm just going to paint that midtone adjustment. You see that? Just like that. And it's only targeting my midtones. And I'm going to come in here as well. And over there. And I think that's looking pretty good. Now, it might be overdone. Let's see. Here's the before. And here's the after. So I'm going to come back up here and readjust. So I'm going to take the shadow slider, drag it to the right a little bit more. Let's see. And that adds a little extra contrast. So I want to lighten still, maybe right there. I feel there's a slight red cast here. So to take care of that, the RGB drop down here, click this and click on red and just drag this slider to the right. And when you do, you're going to add cyan to the overall image. So I just want to add a little bit of that cyan to offset the red. Okay, and that'll kind of remove that color cast. See right there, I think like at a 9, maybe an 8. Okay, here is a before and here's the after. So I lightened up the midtones and got rid of that red color cast. I might just paint in here just a little bit more in this section. I think that's it. Again, here is the before. And here's the after. Just a minor little adjustment at the end. Let's take a look at the overall before and after. Here's the overall before. And here is the after. So I think it's come a long way. I'm really happy with it. Am I done at this point? Maybe, but I'm not sure. I may come back and revisit this later. But I think for the tutorial, I think I'll stop at this point and save it out with layers intact. To save it, I'll just come up here to File and click on Save, and it will save it out. And all my layers will be there when I come back to this if I decide to work on it further. Well, there it is. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial today. If you did, please give it a like, share it with your friends. If you're not yet a subscriber, please subscribe, click the bell notification icon. Then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time, but until then, happy editing.